So I am going to go ahead and get started because we're going to have a short class tonight. And I know that I go into each class thinking this might happen, but I'm really going to try to make it happen tonight to even get us out a little on the early side. Um, I guess groups seem like or must feel like they're in pretty good shape. I know leaving last week, some groups seemed to say that they wanted to come in at 5 this week and work a little bit before class started. But it didn't seem like groups needed that. So I'm just going to take that as a sign that groups think that they're in pretty good shape at this point. So I guess I'll take that as good news, right? So anyways, I want to start by just talking about the remainder of the class because we're kind of close enough to the end of the course at this point that we can do so. And maybe there's one piece of the puzzle that I just want to get some feedback from you guys on whether you think it's the right way to go. So just sort of quickly looking at what we have left. Let me go where we actually can see that. Get back to my normal role. So basically, after this week, we've got 5 weeks left. All right. Sprinkled within those 5 weeks, we need 1 week that is going to be the game beta testing week, where you will actually have people engage in gameplay with your game and get some feedback. I know several weeks ago you got the alpha test where you were just sort of describing the game and getting feedback there. This will be the sort of the last chance to get some real practical feedback, maybe final elements or adjustments you may need to make to rules or things like that, just by having people sit down and kind of go through your game. So that's one activity we need to get in there. The gamification, which is one of the main things I'm going to talk about tonight, is not going to really require much class time, except I do want to have a class where we can do a little, I call it a debrief. The gamifications, you're going to actually do the gamification with, if you're a teacher, with a group of students, or if you're not a teacher, with whoever it is that you work with. Whoever you're building the gamification activity for, you're going to actually do it. So I just want to have a class after that where everybody can kind of share how it went, what they saw, what kinds of things they did. So that's a sort of another class. We're going to have a class that's the final game presentations. The games are done, and we kind of officially present them and get a chance to see them. And that's going to be one at a time where a group will really sort of show their game and maybe do a little bit of gameplay with it. So if people haven't seen each of the games, you'll get a chance to see what all the other groups have come up with. And we also just need to do some course wrap-up stuff. There's the dreaded course reviews, where you all talk about how horrible I was and you never want to take a class in this department again and all that, and that's all fine. So that's kind of 4 weeks-ish worth of stuff. And we have 5 weeks to go. In the original syllabus, I had 1 week. I think it was I can't remember if it was week 12 or 13 that was on the syllabus as a TBD, kind of like if we need a week to expand into to do something. So as I'm looking at this and looking what we have left and wanting to make sure to give people enough time to finish things and all that, here's my current thinking, and I'm willing to adjust this if you wish, is that we would aim to do the game beta testing on week 12. That's 2 weeks from now. The reason I want to do it there is so that then you have 2 weeks before the games are due, which would be on the May 1st class, that is what it is on the syllabus. That's when the games were supposed to be due, and we do game presentations there. So beta testing on the 17th, and final game presentation on the 1st. The 24th, sort of in between those two, is where I was thinking the gamification presentations would happen. And what that would do would allow us to have, from tonight, to have 3 weeks to do that gamification project. And like I said, I'm going to explain all the details of that tonight. But that gives you basically a week to do planning for the gamification, and gives you a week or a week and a half to find a time to actually do the activity with a group, and then also get your thoughts together so that then you're ready present. And then, whoops, I always forget that this is a touch. And then obviously the week 15 would be our final wrap up where we'd be completing the course evaluations. I've just got some things to kind of go over in a closure sort of way. If for some reason we don't get through all of the game presentations on May 1st, that'll give us a little overflow into May 8th, and so on. So bottom line is that TBD week, the 1 week that doesn't really seem to be spoken for is next week, is week 11. So my thought is, and this is about this class, but also because I know a lot of you are in the other class too, and we have the Moodles due on the 16th, is that we would not meet next week. So if a group wants to get together on their own and do some final game work so that they're ready to beta test on the 17th, that would be available to you. If you just need a week to focus on other things, it would be available. But in terms of things I need to cover, it's not like I couldn't come up with something to do next week, but I also feel like our main focus at this point is getting these projects done. And if we've got an extra week in the calendar, it seems like that would be a good week. And that then lines up the other classes also not meeting online next week, again, to let people really focus on getting projects done. So does that seem reasonable to everyone? I know if you're a teacher, your spring breaks are probably happening in one of these weeks. I know some schools, next week is actually your spring break. I know mine, it's the week after. But so that might line up too. But so my current thinking is that we don't meet next week as a class, but certainly if your game group wants to make use of that time, it doesn't even have to be obviously Wednesday night, but if you've got a time in the week you want to just get together and do your final preparations for the 17th. 17th would primarily be about the game beta testing and just making sure everybody knows what they need to do to finish up the gamification. Week 13 would be the gamification presentations, and those are going to be short because we've got 16 of them to go through. It's not like you're doing a full-blown presentation, but just kind of like a quick little thing of what you did and what it was like and did it work and so on. And then May 1st would be official game presentations, and week 15 would be let's wrap up the class and wave goodbye. Okay, so does that seem like a good plan? I anticipate that whenever a teacher says we're not going to meet for a week, nobody's going to say, nah, I really feel like we need to come in and do something. I'm not getting my money's worth. So that's okay. You've got the course evaluation, so if you feel like I should have scheduled something for this week, you can always put in, I feel like I got shortchanged because we skipped a week. But considering what a rough start we had at the beginning of this course, I think we've managed to get back on track pretty well. And unofficially, as I've been observing groups and the discussions, it seems like many of the game groups are really in good shape. It sounds like there's some great things happening. I've been seeing cards passed around and game pieces and game boards and things like that. So I think we're in pretty good shape. So that'll be our plan then, unless anybody speak now or forever hold your peace. So no class next week. Game beta testing week 12. Gamification presentations week 13. Games due week 14. Week 15 wrap up. Okay. All right. Awesome. Okay. Thank you for that. So in terms of tonight, so that's understanding the timeline and due dates for the remainder of the course. So before we go on to gamification project, and I do want to talk about that in more detail, I just wanted to take a moment to point out, and I've done this more in the other class where we're talking about online design tools and things like that, but I've come across some websites out there that are specifically related towards doing games online. And I just wanted to show you a few of them, point out a couple of them to you. Not that you have to incorporate them into your games now, but just as resources as teachers or whatnot, if you're interested in bringing gaming into your classroom and are looking for some way to do it through technology. So I just want to take a few minutes and show you a few of these. there's a page that's got links to each of them in case you want to look up any of them or use any of them on your own. And then I'll talk about gamification and so on. So the first one, should I start with that one? Yeah, I'll start with this one. So the first one is a website called Classcraft. And I feel like I've sort of only scratched the surface on this, so I haven't really gotten into it too far, but it's pretty intense. The idea is it's pure gamification. It's designed to take, generally speaking, sort of classroom behavioral types of things and building an entire kind of World of Warcraft framework around those activities. So you create classes, and within the classes, you add your students. The students each create an avatar. There are, I think, 4 classifications of avatars. There's the healer, there's the warrior, there's I think the mage, and I can't remember what the other one is. I haven't. I just came across this in the last week.
Yeah, like how that would work, because we have a lot of gamers in our.
Yeah.
Like that's definitely something.
So what you do is you set it up where you assign certain points to certain positive activities and certain negative activities. So, and it's all done on basis of XP, of experience points. So it's all using all the terminology of people who do this sort of hardcore gaming. You can set up quests, which is basically like setting teams against teams to see if they, who can get the most experience points. You can, if a student loses all of their points, then there's sort of a penalty activity they have to do to get back into the game, or if their team loses points. So, I wish I had a more developed version of this, but I was just kind of looking through it. But for example, you get classes and everybody creates their avatars and you can customize them and do a lot of stuff. And each character has hit points and experience points and all of that. You level up as you do a certain number of activities.
Like where it says HP, AP, or X, like is that you assigned? Like, okay, HP would be behavior. AP is like, did you do your homework?
Yeah.
I don't know World of Warcraft, but
they earn that. So you set up quests. Let's see here. You set up quests where you can.
Is it violent?
No, it's what it's all about.
Like a really sharp spear. We're trying to discourage that.
So you write a fictional story to introduce the objective. So the objective might be putting your books in your cubby when you come into class or something like that. And then you can create the objectives. So it can be an assignment, it can be a task they have to do. Objective name, Sorry, I'm just throwing stuff in here. So really what it's doing is, and like I said, I just came across this, so I've really not had a whole time to explore it, but it's pretty in-depth. So from the teacher's perspective, you kind of need to really understand what's going on with it, and I would need to spend more time with it. But what it looks like it's essentially doing is building a game around all of those classroom types of activities that
you get grades for.
Or that you're just they specifically connect it to PBIS if your school is using that.
But then you would have to input that.
Right, but you'll assign. I wish I could get back to it now. I think because I'm in a class, but like there will be a list of things they can earn points for, and you can customize what the thing is and how many points they earn for it. So then a quest could be, you've got to earn X number of points for turning in homework on time or something like that. And then the different characters have different special abilities. So you can have it set up where like the healer, if a member of their group doesn't get something turned in, that the healer can kind of step in and assist that student to get that thing turned in for, You know, so there's roles that are assigned, and it's pretty in depth from my understanding. So I haven't seen anything else quite like it that's this developed, and I'd like to explore it a little more. I mean, it would take some setting up, but I could see, especially if you're teaching a certain age group that maybe is into gaming already.
I bet your kids in the class would like to, you know what I mean? Like if they're knowledgeable about that. Like I have kids in mind who would probably love to, if I said, gee, could you check this out and see if this, and I could see them all like during lunch or during like a study hall and things like that, like going into it, seeing if that.
Yeah, so if you want to explore it some, I wish I'd come across this, you know, a month or so ago so that I could have done a little more exploration. Maybe I'll try to look at it a little more over the next couple of weeks and give you guys an update on it. But it's almost like building lesson plans that turn into games that have a game structure around them. And it's really using all that terminology from World of Warcraft types of role-playing games. Only in this case, the role that they're playing is attempting to encourage good behaviors and things like that. And you get to customize those behaviors and so on.
I have a couple teachers at my school use Class Dojo, which is
Oh,
kind
yeah.
of like,
Yeah, that's
Oh.
what I was
like
thinking.
this, but it's like, I don't know, they'll carry iPads around and for like, usually for classes that are like not as great with behavior and stuff, so it'll be like motivation for them to be able with that.
Yeah.
Is this at the
Like,
elementary
oh,
level? 'Cause
Johnny did a good job of
Yeah.
listening
Do-
to
do-
that point.
Yeah.
Florida,
It links
yeah.
back to the parents too. It's like-
Yeah, and
Yeah.
they can use it as like a way to communicate with the parents.
Yeah. Yeah, so I just thought I'd point this one out. There is I did put on the Moodle, there is a page here with some of these. So Classcraft is right there. And obviously with the name Classcraft, they are trying to tie it into the idea of World of Warcraft, that sort of environment. So
like say like you're doing a behavioral thing, like you do, you know, I don't know, you say something kind to another student. How do they get the points assigned? How do you know they actually did it? Is it integrity?
Or do others
I-
fill it in? Like he was nice to me.
Integrity?
So he gets,
You believe that Johnny's going to do his BFF Sam a favor and say he did stuff he
And I
didn't
was
really
thinking
do?
about like how you did your gamification when you were talking about just your homework for last week, the gamification you did.
Yeah.
Mr. Rules
I don't know if the
that.
teacher acts as kind of the dungeon master,
That's
like
what I'm saying.
that
yeah.
they're the ones that verify that an
Yeah.
activity has happened. But so here's some so these are some of the powers that you can customize. So like teleport is a power, and that allows the mage to trade places with any other classmate. So if they can step in and help another classmate complete something that they didn't do or something like that, they can use that, but it costs them points to do that. So they have to think about, okay, I'm going to step in and help you, but I can't do that for everyone because then I'm going to spend all of my points and then have to earn them back, and obviously some of these like the mage can leave the classroom for up to 2 minutes. Obviously that may not work in your situation, but you can customize like what the actual thing is. So you could say it's not that they can leave the classroom, but maybe they can do some activity on their own in your classroom.
Paper pass.
Yeah, just like they get 5 minutes of just them time to do whatever they want or something. So, but you can customize how many points each thing is and things like, oh, here's some of the behaviors. So like cleaning up your workspace, 25 experience points. So if they engage in that behavior, they earn 25 experience points. Here they talk about bullying. So you can lose 25 points if bullying. Using mobile phones when not allowed. So it's the World of Warcraft visuals and terminology, but it's definitely geared towards modern classroom sorts of settings, and that's the kind of thing that they're geared.
Where it's like Fortnite instead of this.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Well, maybe there is. Maybe there's a class night or something where they're like, So anyway, so that was an interesting one. Like I said, I haven't seen anything else quite that developed, but possibly out there. So another one that I came across is Tableau. And what's interesting about this is that the way that they state it is you can take any physical game, any board game, any card game, any dice game, and can convert it into an online playable version. And the way you do that is by, I mean, you have to have the images. So you may have to create the images or Photoshop the images or something. But you can upload the images of the game board, of the cards. You then set up, so you create the gaming pieces. So whether that's a card or a board or a playing piece or a dice, you create the pieces. And there's a whole library of pieces that other people have created that you can pull from. And then you create a game box. So then you select which pieces go into the game box. So you can say we need 2 dice, we need 25 cards, we need this game board. And then from there you set up a table, and the table is sort of the initial state of the game for people to then play. So it doesn't know rules, so it can't monitor a game and know that a student does something that they should or shouldn't do. But if you want to take a game that you've got in the real world and want to have an electronic version of it, this is a website that lets you do that. It looks like, just looking through it, some people have like taken Monopoly and turned Monopoly into a virtual version. And then students can just open it up, log into it, and play the game virtually. So that was kind of an interesting take as well. I will say that from my poking around in this one a bit, the parts of it are a bit clunky. It's not as drag and drop as you might want it to be. They acknowledge that it's sort of in an alpha phase, meaning that it's still under development and they're looking at adding new features and so on. But it does function. I was throwing something together the other day that just was a couple of dice and so on. But there are a lot of existing tables, and I've noticed a lot of these are just, some of these are just people testing it out and not full. Like, so here's History Exam Project. I have no idea what this is. So when you go to play it, so I don't know if this is a complete game or not, but we'll see. Oh, history. Yeah. So, yeah, this looks like it's something in progress, but I don't know. It must be something where you move things around.
Can
You
people like change your game?
can.
Or, like, you have to be like,
I think there's different levels. Like when you create game pieces, you can specify whether that game piece is only yours or whether other people can include those game pieces in their games. So at each step, I think you can specify whether the pieces, whether the box, whether the table are public or private. So Gesundheit.
God bless you.
So I know it said somewhere like if you make a game piece private but then include it in a game that's public, people will still be able to play your game, but they won't be able to import those game pieces into their own games. But part of it is it is designed to kind of allow people to pull content that other people have created. So they encourage you, if you've created like a full deck of cards, rather than having other people have to then go and create a full deck of cards, you can just say, oh, there's a full deck of cards. I'm just going to pull that into my game too, because I need that. So again, an interesting approach that I didn't really come across anywhere else. And they specifically say it is so that you can take existing board games, existing physical games, and convert them into a digital environment. If you want to, if you have the time to get the images set and things like that. So that was another one. There's a bunch like this, and this one is probably the least useful in terms of educational, but there's a lot of platforms now that are designed towards making like video game style games online. So with this one, it's sort of a typical platformer sort of setup. If you don't know what a platformer is, that's where you play a game by moving left or right through a flat world, if you think like Mario Brothers and games like that. But with this one, you can go in and you build the world. So there's all sorts of elements you can drop in and move around to create the screens. You can create the characters. You can create interactions. So somebody hits a star and they get points or whatever. So I didn't really see a ton in terms of like educationalness of this. But this is probably the most common type of online game creator that you'll find is this idea of creating like a platformer style of video game. And in this day and age, like you used to have to know how to program to create these. These are really geared towards just drag and drop. Here I want to put these blocks in this configuration and throw these characters out there and then have them behave in this way. So there's a bunch like that. This is called Flow Lab. And it's another one. And again, most of these, you can at least start using them for free. I look for things. So you can do a free sign up. Most of them then are freemium where you can do a certain amount for free, but then if you want to get the full package, you've got to pay for it. And then another approach that there are again a lot of them out there. This is a site called Whisk Online. And this is specifically geared towards education. And they are somewhat gamified. They really end up feeling a little bit more like PowerPoints that have a certain amount of interactivity on them. So for example, I was looking at this reading a triple balance beam. And it's kind of part video and part activity. Oh. Get unstuck. I like that.
Welcome to this activity on reading a triple beam balance.
So it goes through a
A
series of
triple beam
screen.
A triple beam
With the
balance
parts.
needs to be zeroed out. Then, when your balance has been adjusted, when you
So
have determined
then it gets
the
to,
triple beam balance is only accurate to 1/10 of a gram. Let's determine the mass of the following object. Test your weights by selecting each increment on the scale and observing the needle close-up. Enter the weights you think should be used, starting with the 100-gram weight. Then select Check Answer.
so then you go through and as you move the weight, the needle moves. So then you got to figure out, okay, well, it's less than 300. So I put in 200 and it says, yes, you're correct. And then you continue
Follow
with the
same
10
steps
gram.
for the 10 gram and the 1 gram weights until the pointer is straight.
So they are really this sort of idea of, PowerPoint slide kind of approach. But it does give the ability to have kind of quizzing or interactivity as they go through. Some of them can assign points as you go, so you have to get to a certain number of points before you can really finish it. So this is sort of another approach that I've come across. They probably feel the least game-like. Some of them are more so than others, but they do have some games here. Let's see. Protein synthesis baseball. I have no idea what this is.
Yeah,
So
that's what I'm doing now. Wow.
so let's see.
Tomorrow's lesson.
Okay. So where in the cell are nucleic acids stored? I have no idea. In the nucleus. Correct. Hey. The sugar of RNA is ribose. We got 2 runners on base.
AUG.
Okay, I'm going to answer wrong. Oh. All right. So within that same sort of platform, yep, this
Yeah,
is
man, looks fun. It does look fun.
this is sort of more gameable, or this is more like a game because they're adding sort of the
So you can
rules
pick your
of
class
thing.
and teams.
Yeah, I guess
So
so
once they get 3 wrong, then the yellow team's up, and then they go and see.
yeah,
Yeah.
get scores.
Like a search for
I like that.
Yeah, I think they've got
I saw arts and
Okay.
yeah. So here you've got games. So here are the different types of games. So
So you can just add your own stuff.
What's chocolate?
Chakalaka. Ooh.
So wait, you have to make that game? Or is it already?
Well, these are ones that are already available. You can.
Let's go.
Ooh, SAG versus AFTRA. This is in my. SAG is the Screen Actors Guild, and AFTRA is the American Federation of Television something. Oh, there it is, right there. American Federation of Television and Radio, or something like that. So So this is, what is arbitration? Out of court settlement. You know, oh, I don't even know what I'm supposed to do here.
Pick the broccoli up.
Oh. Oh, it's like, what's the game? Candy Crush.
Oh, wow.
It's vegetable.
So,
Vegetable.
anyways. So I don't know what that has to do with the court case, but in any case, so this, again, it's just another place. So yeah, they've got pre-built ones, and you can also go to, they have a game builder. So here are the different sort of classifications, like Jeopardy. I know there's all sorts of online platforms for doing Jeopardy style games, but these are all their different types of
Oh, they have
games, and
memory
then
match too?
and then you
That's
can
good.
you can add your own content
It's the best website
into the game
What's
structure.
Squid
So,
Hunter?
Go ahead, click on it and see.
I don't know. I did the Have You Heard, which was kind of interesting because aliens come
Aliens?
out and you build a band. Whenever you win, you get to add a new person to your band, and then they start playing music. And so, single player, multiple choice question answer game uses directional arrows to control the pirate and spacebar to fire harpoons at enemy squids. Collect treasure by killing squids and answering correctly. Wrong answers will lower the player's score. So, well, then you need an account, which I don't think I find to sign up for this. But
Is this free?
yeah, this is, here it is. It's completely free. Now,
That
one thing
is
you
really
probably
cool.
you did notice is that there's lots of ads,
Yeah.
which I'm sure is how they're making their money. So if you know you need to be kind of sensitive to your environment and what you don't know what ads are going to pop up. I'm sure they're educationally safe, but you know you never know. But yeah, this is another route to go. Now I think, if I recall, I think this website is still Flash based, which this day and age, the majority of stuff online is moving away from Flash, but there are still some sites that still build off of Flash. So I think most of these are authored in Flash, so you may have an issue if you're using mobile devices or devices that can't use Flash, which some like iPads you can't really run Flash on.
I think
Without
the last
getting-
ones that are using an iOS phone or something like that, right? Click on the Squid Game again.
So
No, sorry.
No, I saw it.
Never mind, I saw it.
Yeah.
It was on one of them.
yeah, it might have been if when you were playing the game. So they might be starting to roll stuff over to HTML5, in which case you would switch to that version of the game if you were playing it on. So, and there's a lot of sites out there like this too. So this is, I just wanted to show you a few examples of some of the types of sites that are out there if you're interested in doing online gaming, but not really wanting to take the step of learning how to actually program. So yeah, I mean, it would be like,
Exam questions and play like.
it would be like using,
Yeah, I like that.
shoot, what did we use the first day of class? The
I know.
Kahoot, right? So it's that kind of idea where they give you a framework, you fill in your own content, and presto changeo, you've got the gamification. They're typically, well, some of them might actually approach a full game. You'd have to run it through the 4 parameters to really decide if it's a real game or just gamifying. But it's another way if you want to add some of that motivation into an activity that's not overly motivational in and of itself.
Do
These
you
are some
all-
options.
Did you come across anything like if you own the game, like do you share a link for your students to get to it, or
Yeah,
once it's up there, then it's available for anybody?
I think-
I did something in Spawners class, and like I created something, and it made it available, like anybody can use it.
I don't know for this site specifically. I know a lot of sites do give you the option of, is this public or is this private? Especially like if you're building something, you don't want people looking at something that's half built or whatever. So it would probably depend on the site itself. That might be a feature where you have to have like a full subscription to a site in order to be able to generate custom URLs or something along those lines. But if you go site by site, I mean, a lot of them will have some sort of a help section or a frequently asked questions, and a lot of times those can be answered there too. So I'm still wondering what Candy Crush has to do with a game based on the Screen Actors Guild. contract
Oh,
law
I'm gonna
case.
play it tonight, right?
Yeah. So anyway, so obviously this is within the educational technology program, and we've been focusing on making games that largely are not using a ton of technology, although you're using technology to create the graphics and to do the instructional design. But if you have an interest in exploring gamifying, and maybe because, and I'm going to go through our gamification process, you might want to use one of these as your tool for the thing you want to gamify for your gamify project. So I just wanted to throw a few of these out there as things to check out. And there's tons. I mean, I picked 4 out of, if you do a search for online game builder or online game designer, or if you just do online games, those generally you can't really customize, but maybe you'll find something that fits your content. But if you're looking to create something, each of these websites allows you to make your own version of something that can fit what you want it to do. So just some things to check out. All right. Any questions, comments?
They all look fun.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of purposely picked these 4 because they're 4 different. This one is really whole world building around behavioral reinforcement. This one is taking existing games and turning them into a digital form. This one is about sort of traditional video game creation, and this one is more like quiz type games and sort of that flash world that doesn't really exist anymore. So I do have the page on the Moodle that's got links to all 4 of those sites. If you find something else you think is really fascinating, feel free to forward it to me or bring it up in the class. So, all right. So look at this. Yes, I think I am going to get us out of here early tonight. I'm shortening the class this week. I'm not meeting next week. What's this world coming to?
Good
Good
review.
good
You'll be
ratings
loved
on
by
that last
all.
class.
Yeah. All right. Okay, so let's talk about this gamification project. Sorry, I wish I had there's on my computer at school I can zoom the screen in, but the shortcuts don't seem to work on this one. So anyways, so the gamification project, as I said, at day 1 of this course, my vision for this part of the project of the course was going to be a little bit more involved and a little bigger. It was the piece of the class that, with all of our delays initially and everything, I decided to kind of shrink down a bit. So this is not designed to be a huge project. I'm probably even going to adjust the percentages for grade calculation. I think this is currently supposed to be, I think, 25% of your grade. I may bump that down and maybe bump up the forums or something like that. But the idea is to follow through on, because a lot of times gamifying an activity is a lot simpler and quicker thing to do in an educational setting than to create an entire game. Hopefully you're getting a sense in your game projects of sort of just what's involved in actually getting a full-fledged game out the door. Gamifying is usually a much easier thing to implement, and requires a lot less in the way of planning and construction of materials. So the idea here, the bottom line, is I want you to take an activity that you already do, something that maybe is coming up in the next couple of weeks, or which could be coming up in the next couple of weeks, either in your classroom, or I know we've got people that are not teachers, something that's involved with what you do at work. So some activity that, as we've pointed out, is right now somewhat low motivational activity. Something that's either repetitive or just not very interesting, or it's hard to get your students to engage or to really care about getting something done. So that's kind of step 1, is just to kind of examine. Now I know last week I had you do a forum where you sort of already were thinking about this. And if that activity that you chose and you got feedback on, if that one still feels like something that you could build out into this full gamification project, then you can keep that. You don't need to start at square one. But if you threw something out there in the forum and you got some feedback and thought about it some more and said, yeah, I can think of something better, then feel free also to pick a different activity. So you're going to pick the activity, you're going to examine it for why is it not motivational? What is it about the activity that is making people not care about it? You're going to then come up with a gamification strategy. So we've got the 4 characteristics of games: the competing agents, the rules, the meaningful, ambiguous decisions, and the end game. And kind of like what we brainstormed in class last week, you're going to try to come up with some combination of those 4, one or some combination of them, that you're going to incorporate into the activity with the express goal of making the activity more intrinsically motivational. All right, that's usually the goal of gamifying something. So in that process, there is, and I've pared it down, but there is an instructional design framework for this. And I'm just going to go, so each of you on this page has your own wiki page. This is where you're going to report things. So I'm just going to go to Kayla's because it's at top. So I've taken all 5 of the ADDIE steps. First one, analyzing. I've pared this down to just 3 questions. What's the problem? And the problem should be some version of, you know, this activity, my students aren't motivated to do this particular activity. So that's what we're looking for, those kinds of activities. So that your problem is probably going to mention something about motivation. The need, again, this is a little artificial, but because we're gamifying, is the need should be some version of, I need to incorporate elements of gaming into this activity in order to fill in the blank, in order to make my kids want to actually do it, or something like that. So that's the need. And then the audience, because you are actually going to do this. I want this to be practical. So you should have in mind who you're going to do this with. Is it a class? Is it a group of students? Is it a group of coworkers? Is it, I guess if you're not a teacher, you could even go with a family or a group of roommates or something like that. Some group of people that you interact with regularly that you can do this activity with. So you're going to analyze the design. Again, I've pared this down to just 3 questions. Describe your activity as it exists now and tell us why it's not very motivational as it is now. Number 2, which of the game elements or what combination of game elements are you planning on incorporating? I'm going to use competing agents and an end game. All right. And then 3, what is your proposal for the revamped activity? So it starts with what is the activity now? What are you going to add into it? And then how do you see the new activity playing out with those game elements added in? Okay, so that's design. And then develop, there's really just one question, and that's just what materials or resources, if any, will you need to do the improved activity? There may not be anything. If all you're doing is providing a set of rules for an activity, then you probably don't need anything physical. But for example, if you want to use one of these online platforms, then you would say, well, I need to build a, whatever, what we're just on, a whisk. I need to do a whisk activity, or I need to do a Kahoot, or something like that. So if there's anything you need to create in order to pull off your gamification activity, that would just go in here. So that's what you do ahead of time. Ideally, in terms of a timeline, because we've got 3 weeks until these should be completed, I would suggest that over the course of the next week, that these 3 areas get filled in. So you've got your plan in place over the course of the next week. Then the next thing is to actually do the activity. So implement. Now that you've figured out how to gamify this thing, actually do it with your group of people. So that could happen then sometime in the next week. If you spend a week developing it, then that gives you a week to actually find a time to do it with whoever your target audience is. Once you've done the activity, then you're going to come back to the instructional design plan. And we haven't really had a chance to do this because we haven't reached the point of implementing or evaluating, but after you've done it, describe how your implementation actually went. Did your gamification activity go the way you thought it was going to go? Did you run into problems? So this one is really just describing what happened, and then evaluate the results. Did you see any evidence that the outcome was improved? Did you see anything that said, oh yeah, now they wanted to do it, whereas before they didn't? Do you have any data to support that? And you don't need to create spreadsheets and things like that. It could be just after you do the activity with your students saying, so students, what did you think of that? Was that more fun to do? It could be informal like that, but see if you can get some sort of a feedback or indication that this worked, or maybe it doesn't. You might have tried it and it just fizzles. So
It doesn't have to be student like feedback, right?
no, it could be you. It could be an observation you make. You could say, well, typically only 2 of my students push their chairs in when they're done with class, and now I've noticed that the whole class is doing it. So it could be just that, but something, if there's anything that you can see that actually says this either worked or didn't work. Okay. How did the target audience respond? Did they seem to enjoy doing it? Whatever. And then finally, just what changes, if any, would you make? Now that you've done the activity, you've gotten some feedback, you've seen what's going on. If you were to do this again, is there anything that you would change to make it even better? All right. So that's the final piece after you've done it. So that would complete the instructional design. In terms of what you turn in, that's it. That wiki page, if you've got that all filled in, that's the piece that is what you're submitting. Then the final thing, as I said, in that week 13 class, we'll just go quickly around. I'm not looking for full-fledged half-hour presentations with PowerPoints and all that. It'll just be quickly going around the room and having each person say, here's the activity I did, here's what I did to it, and here's how the people responded, and it worked really well, or some variation of that. Just to have a chance for everyone to kind of see what everyone else did and maybe get some ideas from the group think of the whole class. All right, so that's the gamification project sort of in its entirety. All right, so to summarize, pick an activity that's boring, that you're doing now, target it towards a specific audience, come up with a plan to gamify it, document that plan on the wiki page, do the activity with your target audience, and then come back to the wiki page and reflect on it. How did it go? What would you change? And then we'll have that time to do short presentations in class about what you did. Okay? So questions about the activity? I need at least 3. No.
So, given what I know now about what we're supposed to do, does it have to be the exact same as what it was before?
No. All right. So the forum was sort of to get you thinking about it. If knowing this now, what you put in the forum is a good fit, then you can run with it. If it's not, then pick something else. Right? The forum was sort of to get you thinking about activities that could be gamified and to get some feedback from other people, hopefully. So if it works and you want to continue with that idea, you can. But if that idea doesn't seem like, or you've come up with a better idea, then by all means run with that. Okay? Yes?
Any specific materials expected for the presentation? Or just
No, not for the presentation. I mean, we'll have the wiki page, so if it's helpful for us to just throw that up on the screen, but it honestly could just be verbal. Just, if you created something online, if you used a Kahoot or you created something using one of these websites and you want to kind of just give us a quick glimpse of it, that's fine too. But because I'm not really requiring any sort of materials to do this, depending on what the thing is, I'm not going to require you to have something physical to show. So it can just be, here's what I did and here's how it went. All right? One more question. All right? Trying to be Dr. Sponder now. One more. I can wait. And then you wait an uncomfortably long time until somebody says, what did you have for supper tonight? Sorry, that doesn't count as a question. So, okay, so that is kind of the 2 main pieces. So we've got an introduction to some of these online platforms. We've gone over the gamification project. The wiki, you notice I embedded a couple of links to that wiki in the instructions, but it's also just right here in the homework part of the Moodle. It says gamification wiki. And just so everyone knows, the way that the wiki works, that's a fun thing to say, is once you're in your page, just hit the edit tab here at the top. And when you do that, it'll just go into a normal text editing box, and then you can type your answers in. I'm doing it this way instead of through a forum, because a forum, once you've done a post once, you can't go back and re-edit it. So this way you can put in some of the information, save it, come back to it later, add in the rest of the information, and so on. So that's all you have to do is just hit the edit tab, and then when you're done, hit save at the bottom, and then that information will get added into the page. Just make sure you're doing your own page, which should be self-explanatory. I know we've got 2 Melissas in the class, but I think I put last initials, yes. And I know we've got 2 Brians, but one's Brian with an I and one's Brian with a Y. So just make sure you're going to your page when you're filling your information in. So this will actually be the artifact for the project is this page. And then if you've got other things that you develop in order to do it, those will be there too. All right, how are we doing? Good so far? Okay, this could be a really short class. That's okay. All right, so yeah, let me just, I guess really the only thing I've got left is just to go over the homework, which we've really already covered. So, and again, I'm sorry this is so small. I wish I had a easy way to zoom in. So thing number 1 is the gamification project. As I said, as a not a required, but in order for you to save your own sanity, we've got 3 weeks until the presentation. So if you spend the next week trying to get the A, the D, and the D of the design done, so you've got your plan in place by, say, a week from now, then plan on sometime in the following week actually doing the activity. And then that still leaves you a week to finish up the I and the E and to kind of just make sure you're ready to present on it. So that's kind of a suggested framework for it. So in light of that, I'm suggesting that within the next week or so that you get your plan in place. And then I do point out that the full activity should be completed in 3 weeks, week 13, so that you can present to the class. So you can get started on that. And then the other thing is just the group game projects. Remember that our next meeting then, since we won't be meeting next week, is the beta testing week. So that week, your group should be prepared to have your game playable. Every little T may not be crossed yet. Every I may not be dotted. You may be using temporary pieces if you haven't gotten some things fully created yet. But make sure that you have whatever you need so that a group of people could sit down and actually engage in your game. And then what you'll be doing is getting feedback. They'll play the game for a little bit and then provide some feedback about things that they noticed, maybe gaps in rules, confusions about anything, suggestions for design, whatever they may be. And the idea then is you come out of the April 17th class with your group kind of having a final punch list of things that need to be completed for 2 weeks later when the game is actually done and will be presented to the whole class as a finished product. Okay, so that's really the other thing. And since we are not meeting next week, if your group needs to get together on their own, by all means, feel free to do that, so that you know that your games will be playable by the 17th, by 2 weeks from now. Yes?
So the rules video isn't required for that.
No, that's a piece that can still be in process, right? So I haven't quite figured out the exact logistics of the beta testing night because I want to make sure there's at least one person from each group staying with the game so that if problems arise, there's somebody there who can kind of respond to it. But also make sure that there's enough people going out to the other games to have them playable. So I haven't quite worked out the details of that. But yeah, but so if that video's not there, that's fine because there will be a person there who can kind of fill in the gaps. So, all right. Other questions? Nobody wants to ask questions because you just want to get out.
No, I think you, like, if we do, we can just email you.
Oh, yeah,
Because
yeah.
I said, right now, I think you've covered everything, and I can't think of anything that you haven't already gone over that, right? Like, we know what we need to do. We
Yeah.
have the
And like I
things that we
said,
need to be.
Informally, just as I've been circulating around and listening to conversations, I feel like I don't get the sense that any of the groups are like panicked, like, oh my gosh, we're never going to get this thing done on time, right? In my Moodle class, I'm getting the
Yes.
sense that some people are like, oh my gosh, I don't think I'm going to get this done on time. In here, though, I feel like the groups are in a pretty good spot, knowing you've got 2 weeks to get the game playable and then another 2 weeks after that to really put the final polish on. I think we're in good shape. So that's why I think fitting this gamification thing sort of in and around, I think is not going to be too stressful because it's not really designed to take up a ton of time. It's not a huge project. So I think it should work out okay. But my least goal is to stress anybody out over any of this. So, all right. So that is basically what I wanted to go over tonight. I can certainly hang around. I mean, we're scheduled to go to 7:30. If any groups want to stay for a few minutes to touch base, I'm not going to kick you out of here right away. So feel free to hang out. We actually did end up with almost everybody here. I think we're just missing the two that I knew weren't going to be here. Sandy and who else was it that told me they weren't? Kathleen. But everyone else is here. So if you want to take this moment, but I'm not going to force you to stay. And I will next see, and actually it lines up now. Both of my classes won't be meeting in person next week. So regardless of online or offline, I'll be meeting everybody in 2 weeks for our next full class meetings. All right? Okay. So feel free to hang around if you want to, but you don't have to.
Melissa.
How about if I